Saying is there's a possibility of some sort of war in the future in two different areas. So first area is in the Middle East between Israel and Iran. What has happened recently is one of Iran's ships was destroyed, and it's reportedly probably Israel. It's not been confirmed. It's probably been Israel. Now, there's been many wars in even our nation's history where if one of our ships gets blown up, it's usually kind of one of the little causes that can lead to war. World War I, the sinking of the Maine, or no, Spanish-American War, the destruction of the Maine, whether that was purposeful or accidental, still doesn't matter. We used it to say we're going to go to war. World War I, sinking of Lusitania and other ships that were destroyed by German U-boats, right? It's one of the things that can lead to war. Not saying that they're going to, but it's something to be aware of. The other one is with China and Taiwan. Now, Taiwan is a country that has before been controlled by China. And they have it, not to use their precise words because I can't remember their precise words, but they basically said, China has basically said, we can take Taiwan back if we want to and have full control over it if we want to. Taiwan is an ally of ours, and of Japan. So this is what happened recently. So here's this little tiny country right here on the coast of China, this yellow one right here, is Taiwan. So basically what happened is there was an exercise of China where they basically flanked around Taiwan. And now they say it was just an exercise. Taiwan says we're fully aware and handling the situation, but that's it. What some people have been saying, not sure if it's true or not, because I'm not fully versed in like paying attention to what's going on with China and Taiwan. I'm not like that's not my job to be into that. But some people are saying that that exercise was really a show that they could surround Taiwan to control it and take over by force, and that Japan and the United States would not be able to get through. They wouldn't be able to solve it. So there's that, right? Kind of nervous. If I were to say the countries that we probably want to keep as the US, our ears always tuned to make sure that we're having good relationships with them or trying to keep it good, that we could possibly go to war with are Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. Those are the 4 countries that were powerful enough that they can do something. They are our enemy enough that we really don't like them and they don't really like us. So if there were any countries that we were going to go to war with, it would be them, as in like us and them. But however, if there were a war between China and Taiwan, or China came and took over Taiwan, Japan would come and be an ally of Taiwan, we would come over and be an ally of Taiwan, and we would be assisting in a war. So, things like this, even though it has to do with other countries, they still do affect us because we have allies. I would say we will help you if someone tries to do something wrong towards you. Okay, Taiwan and Hong Kong, they're both, China says that they're in control. Most of the world recognizes Taiwan as its own country, but to China, they're like, yeah, they're not entirely their own country. They're not entirely independent. They're still part of us. And they will enforce it if they need to, is basically what they have said. So, okay, before I get to our objective today, one of the last things that we talked about before the break was going into World War II. Okay, we talked about the causes of World War II, all those things happening in the world, and we talked about what brought us into the war, which was what? What brought us, our country, into the war? I'll give you a hint.
Bombs.
At where?
A place.
A place. December 7th, 1941. attacked us where? There we go, Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was attacked by Japan. Okay, but why though? Did any of you guys know why? We haven't talked about it in class yet. Why would they attack us? We're not in the war.
They don't like this.
Well, that's true, they didn't really like us that much. But we weren't really their enemy before the war. So why would they bring us into war? Why would they attack us? Here's why. Do you guys remember when we were talking about the causes of the war? And I talked about Japanese expansion and how they invaded into China? You guys remember that was one of the causes? What were they looking for when they invaded China? Supplies, resources. That's what they wanted when they invaded. So they're looking for that stuff. One of their supplies that they want more than others to help fuel their exploits is what? What's a fuel that's very valuable? Burn it. You turn it into gasoline. We have pups here. Starts with an O. Oil. There we go, oil, right? Oil. We sell a lot of oil to Japan. So what we do when they start invading China is we go, that's not very nice of you, is it? And make you Japan, or you're Japan today. So that's not very nice of you. Why are you invading China? So we basically say, we're going to put sanctions on you, which means limitations. We're only going to sell certain amount of things to you because we don't approve of what you're doing. That's basically what sanctions are. Basically a way to respond to what other countries do by saying, we don't like it, we don't support you, without being like, oh, you did this, I'm going to start fighting you right now. You know, it's basically try to get them to stop before war happens. So we put sanctions on them. And then they attack us. They attack us because they're thinking, okay, the US is already getting involved. Sooner or later, the US is going to be in World War II. So we might as well attack them before they're in the war and make their ships not usable, put them out of commission, and attack them so they can't use their ships, so they can't come and stop us. Sounds like a good plan, doesn't it? We bomb their ships because we can only get to Japan with ships, can't we? You can't get there on land with our trucks and everything. But I think my hair turned it on. But if we attack their ships, well, they're not going to be able to attack us back, all right? Let's go for it. So that's what they did, okay? That's why they attacked us. And after Pearl Harbor happened, we're like, all right, we're joining the war. Here's a conspiracy theory, though, okay? If you guys like conspiracy theories, this is a good one. So we're going to back up a little bit here. When we put our sanctions on them, we might have done that on purpose, even if we didn't need to. We might have just done that anyways. Not to, stand against the people, trying to invade China, because that's horrible, but because we want to put limitations on Japan because we don't like you right now. And maybe we want an excuse to join the war. We've talked about isolationism and interventionism, right? Isolationism is when you want to what? You want to stay away, stay isolated. Don't get involved in foreign affairs. Don't get involved in world wars. Okay, that's what isolationism is. On the other hand, interventionism, what do? You join war. You get into other affairs. You get into foreign affairs, right? Most of the country is still leaning on this isolationist side. They haven't crossed that fence yet. I mean, we crossed a little bit in World War I because people were threatening our land. They were blowing up our ships. We were kind of dragged into it a little bit. But then we're like, okay, let's go back to our hermit shell and let's stay isolationist. But our country, our government, our leadership, they did want, and this part is true, they did want to stop Germany with their expansions. They thought that was wrong. They wanted to stop Germany. We viewed Germany still as the enemy. So we really want an end to fight against Germany. So maybe, here's the thing. maybe the president and his leadership are saying, in order to get the country and the people on board with the war, we have to have a good reason. We have to push them over the fence into interventionism, into that mindset. So something has to happen where they're like, yes, we have to fight. Something has to happen. So maybe they put those sanctions on there because they knew that Japan would have a response. Maybe, and here's the biggest part of this conspiracy theory, maybe when we were told that we don't know where the Japanese fleet is, that they were moving somewhere, maybe when we were told that there were reports of them coming closer, maybe when after the Pearl Harbor happened, our cabinet members and our president were very calm, as if they knew it was going to happen. Maybe we let them attack us so we'd have a reason to join the war. Maybe they kept it secret, that we knew about it. And there's a whole list of things. Like, there's people who are more into this theory than I am. Well, I'm not so much into it. But there's people who are super into this theory that we let it happen so that we could have an excuse to join the war, and people could say, yeah, let's fight because they attacked us, let's join. We have to defend our people, right? That got people over the fence, didn't it? People were like, yeah, let's go. Let's fight against them. Maybe we needed that. Maybe we let that happen. Now, if you're interested, I have a whole list of all those different things. There's a lot more to it, to this theory, than what I told you. Usually I spend more time on this theory, but we don't have time this year. But if you're interested, I can get that to you. Just let me know and I can get that to you, because it's really interesting. I personally believe it is true more than I don't believe it is true, because of some of the testimonials and some of the facts that are true. Some of the things are just like coincidental that they have on there, but some of the things I wouldn't put it past the government to let something happen in order to say we're going to fight a war, to bring us into a war. I wouldn't pass any government. No government has been immune to that. Some people say, no, I don't support this at all, but some people would say that that even happened in 9/11, that we knew that the towers were going to be attacked so that we have an excuse to go and fight in the Middle East in the Afghan and Iraq wars. Now, I personally don't believe that, but many do. It's the same concept of, will the government keep something secret in order to let some sort of attack happen so we have an excuse, a rallying cry to fight a war with people that we don't like? Maybe, right? So our two main enemies are Germany and Japan, okay? Italy is also an enemy, but like, they're not really doing anything. They're not a big enemy. We're not worried about them, basically. There's the two theaters that we've talked about in our timeline assignment. There's the European theater and the Pacific theater, right? You guys remember that from the timeline assignment? The European theater is basically most European countries keeping Germany from expanding, because at one point during World War II, they controlled all of Europe, basically. They didn't control these ones, but they controlled most of Europe, besides the annexes. And then the Pacific theater is Japan expanding all across this area, okay? So those are the two areas where the fighting happened. Now, we're going to talk about the objective today. Why did the U.S. put Japanese Americans into concentration camps? They were not like the German concentration camps, but we did have concentration camps in our country. So what happened is, actually I'll show you on this map right here. Japan is basically like right here, if this map was showing, more this way, the full globe. Japan is right here, okay? Now, if they were to come and attack mainland US, they would hit the West Coast first, right? See how that's closest? They wouldn't like fly around and, that's more time consuming. We find them easier and we'd respond quicker. So they would attack the West Coast. So we're thinking, if there was some sort of invasion, if we had, if they came to the United States, we would have something happen along this West Coast. We do have a lot of people living here who are either Japanese immigrants, who are not citizens, and immigrants who came and got their citizenship. Now, does anyone know what it takes to gain citizenship? I mean, you could be a citizen by being born here or by being married to a citizen. But if you come here to this country, pretend that you're coming from Japan, and you come to this country, you want to be a citizen, what do you have to do? Do you guys know?
They'll get paperwork.
There's paperwork. Yeah, you have to file for it. There's a test that you have to pass to show that you know enough about America's history and government and how to be a proper citizen in our country. But you also have to live here for today 7 years before you can even apply for citizenship. And you have to pay a few $1,000s today for all that paperwork and for that process to happen. So, I mean, you'd have to dedicate yourself to becoming a citizen, okay? It's no easy task. That's why the immigration issue today, and that has been forever, it's always a difficult issue because it's hard to become a citizen in our country. So, it's really hard. One other thing that you do when you become a citizen is you have to make a pledge that you are loyal to the US and not to any other country. You say, I denounce any other country. So if you're coming from Japan and you become a citizen, you say, I denounce Japan. The US is my country. My loyalty is to the US. Okay? So they swear a loyalty oath. That's what everybody does, no matter what country they're from. They swear a loyalty oath to our country. And that's not uncommon. Happens in most of these countries that they say, well, we want to make sure you're going to be for us, right? Not for anybody else. You're going to be a good citizen for us. So that's another thing that they do. So the government starts to be a little afraid, or so they say. They think that if the Japanese come here and try to invade our country, there's a lot of Japanese Americans who live here who have seen things that they could give vital information to our enemy, Japan. They know where our shipyards are at. They know where our oil rigs are at. We don't know what they're going to do if Japan invades. Are they going to stay with the US or are they going to side with their mother country? What are they going to do? So this is very concerning for us. So what we end up doing is the War Department and setting out this video, this propaganda video. Now, poster propaganda is the most common way of propaganda, but this was a video that was produced, just like that crappy one that we saw with the guerrilla, German guerrilla during World War I, right? That one has amazing cinematography. Do you guys remember that? This one has a little bit better filming, but it's not cartoon type. It's a guy talking and actual video footage, okay? But this video is just something that the government produces that they're saying, okay, we're gonna tell you guys why we're gonna put Japanese into camps. This is what they basically show this before as the commercials that people see in the movie theaters before they watch their movie. Because that's the only way really to get a movie clip pushed out to people is to play it before every movie. So they pushed it out to all the movie theaters. Okay, so I'm going to play it for you. As you guys are watching it, I want you guys to really pay attention to the way that they word things. Okay, they're trying to get you to think something and believe something. That's what propaganda is. They're trying to convince you of something. Okay, pay attention to the words that they're using. I'll pause it a couple times and mention some things to you. And then I'm only saying this because I'm also recording, but recording people, sorry guys. I'm gonna put the video up right after this so that you can see it as well. So for them to say some of these things in here, they're really twisting the story, aren't they? Now this is the video that put out, hey, guess what? Like this is pretty good, like they're happy to do it. They have access to all these amazing things and they're doing it for their country. Like this is a good thing. And oh, they'll go back to their homes after. They'll still have their stuff later. We're taking care of it. They were actually really lucky to have, if they had a friend or a neighbor who could watch their house or hold their belongings for them until they came back. Because who knows when that was going to actually happen. Most houses were taken over by other people. And they came back, their house is gone. Same thing, they actually had gyms where they're like, hey, store your fridges in here, store your big things like your pianos and your dressers and all these, larger furniture, your cars. store them in here, and we'll lock it. Yeah, they were all gone and stolen. Nobody cared to protect them. If they did, they weren't gonna really stop anybody. If they were there trying to protect it, they weren't gonna stop someone from coming in and getting it. So really, these camps, they're pretty bad. There's racetracks that I talked about that they initially went to before they went to their final camps that they spent a few years in. Like they lived in horse stalls, like I mentioned. Most of them did, unless you were like pregnant or you were old or you were sick or you had like a higher status or you were one of the white soldiers who were there. Everybody else lived in these horse stalls in these initial temporary camps. And they were put up so fast and uncaringly that when they whitewashed the paint of the walls to make it kind of look okay, they still had like chunks of manure in that paint that they could pull it off if they wanted to. So you can imagine disease, it stunk, it was bad. Some people were wealthy enough that they could order, and they did have the liberty to order things to be shipped to these camps. Some people got like wood planks that you can put underneath so you don't have to step on the dirt and manure. One person actually asked a friend who lived next door to pull up their linoleum off of their kitchen floor and ship it to them. So they had that to stand on, so that was nice for them to have. Some things were true in these camps, that yes, they were allowed to buy things. They were allowed to have activities in schools. They were allowed to have some sort of government structure. Like they even had a representative in like each district within the camps who basically was like their spokesperson. So if they felt like things were not very good, they can go speak with the camp director and say, hey, this isn't very good for these people, or we're having this issue. And they work to solve it. And that's true. Like, so it's not like you're a prisoner. You don't have a say. You can't do anything. You just sit here. Like, it wasn't like that, okay? So they were offered some freedoms, some availability, some privileges, okay? And there's even times, that's why I laughed when it said, like, healthy meals, right? They weren't that great. Like, that was one thing that the person who was in charge of the district would say, hey, this meat is crap. Like, people are gonna get sick over it. Can you get us some better meat for us to eat? And they would work to get that fixed. So that is true. Okay, they did have things, they had sports, they had activities. Some people even, like the camp that's in Topaz, Utah, which usually I try to arrange a field trip there every year. Didn't work out this year because of COVID, but hopefully it will be next year. If it does work out next year, I'm gonna try to get you guys to be able to go too and have you guys as seniors and the juniors next year go, because you guys couldn't go this year because of COVID. So I'm gonna try to work that into there. Hopefully it'll work. I'm crossing my fingers so you guys can go there. There were even people who were allowed to leave and go up to Salt Lake to work after a couple of years. They were given that freedom, like, hey, there's some jobs needed. Who wants to go work somewhere? You'd have to leave your family here, but you can go work and get it and have a job. And some people are like, yeah, I'll take it. So it's not like, it wasn't at all like German concentration camps, but these were concentration camps. We don't call them relocation camps because it's not like, oh, we're going to relocate you and you live your life. No, we're putting you into camps and we're limiting your freedoms. Okay, we're concentrating you into these camps. Okay, that's what a concentration camp. It's not a relocation camp. It's not an internment camp, even though those are two words that people use, because mostly they're trying to say, oh, we're not like the Germans. We're not going to have concentration camps like the Germans. And it's true. They weren't concentration camps like the German camps, but they were still concentration camps. We just didn't murder people. We didn't do testing on them and experiments on them. We didn't make them do basically slave labor in order to survive and not be killed. Like, it wasn't like that, okay? So we're kind of like, it's like neither good nor bad, right? It's like we were still, our government's decisions was bad enough that they were put in camps in the first place, but they weren't so inhumane that it was like the German camps, right? So there is a difference though. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna have you guys a timeline to have you look at some of the events that have happened to the Japanese leading up to, during, and after World War I. Okay, so you can see that this is starting in 1980s. All my people will do this later. Okay, so for everybody online, what I want you guys to do is I'm going to put on this assignment where you have this video, there is a video embedded from YouTube. I want you to watch that. I want you to pause this. I want you to go watch that video. That's the video that I basically just cut it off, this video off at. Pay attention to the words that they use, that the government uses to convince, they're basically convincing people, oh, camps are fine. They're fine with it. They're happy to sacrifice for our country, which is a bunch of bull crap. There were some who were, but most of them, all they saw it as is, you're taking away my home, you're taking away my freedom. I did nothing wrong. Why are you putting me in camps? I pledged my allegiance to the United States, not to Japan. I have no loyalty to them. I swore my loyalty to the United States, and yet I have no due process. I'm not being protected. My rights are being violated in a country that I pledged my loyalty to. So watch that, and pause this and watch that, and then come back. Okay, so hopefully you've watched that instead of just keeping watching through. But if you didn't, watch it, because it's kind of embarrassing, really, to watch. So next thing you're going to do is you're going to go through the documents that are online. Okay, you're going to read through the documents, basically understand what they're saying, and you're going to answer the questions just because I want to make sure that you read it and you understood it. Okay, this assignment is more of like, actually go through it rather than get everything right. So it's like, just do it and read it and make sure you show me that you understand what it was about. But these documents are all about Japanese internment camps, Japanese concentration camps. And once you are done, you'll pause this video, and then you'll go do that and do the documents. And once you're done, you come back to this video, and the rest of this is designed for you to hear after you have done those documents and read those documents. So as you can see from reading those documents, that there were mostly the cause or the explanation given for having these camps was, oh, well, we're having it because they, we don't know what they're going to do, if they're going to switch their loyalty back to Japan, or if they're going to stay loyal to us if Japan invades. So, we don't know how to treat them. So what they do is, they put the Japanese in these camps, and there are some benefits to the camps. As you saw in the video, there were sports programs, there were schooling, there was church services, there was opportunities for people to have leadership roles. They would have a leader in a sort of district area who would be basically the representative, who would go to camp directors and say, hey, we need this. We need you to get this for us because our people need it. And they say, okay, yeah, we'll get that for you. So it's more of just like, we're going to move you here. You can't leave. You're prisoners for a while because we're at war with your home country, even if you've pledged allegiance to us. We're going to put you here. You have to live here. You have to stay here. And then when we're done, we're at war, then you can go back to your life. But we're not going to harm you. We're not going to hurt you. There's no testing or mass deaths like there were in the German concentration camps. We're not doing those sort of things. It's not those types of concentration camps. They're not a slave labor concentration camps, but they still were concentration camps because they were concentrated into these camps because of who they were. So that it's kind of like, it's not really bad, but it's not good either. It's just kind of stuck in the middle somewhere. One also benefit of people who run these camps is there's some people, for example, in the camp in Utah, in Topaz, Utah, they were allowed to, after a couple of years of the camp being there, they were allowed to go up to Salt Lake and to have a job up there because we needed people to work for the war effort and in the factories. And so there's people who were like, I need workers. So they're like, okay, well, let's have you go and work. On the timeline, one of the things that hopefully you noticed on the timeline was them basically saying that, or drafting the Japanese Americans who were in the camps
Now, if you could imagine them coming up, if you were in one of these camps, and imagine them coming up to you and saying, "Hey, well, I know that we're imprisoning you and your family in this camp, but will you serve our country?" I couldn't imagine myself willingly saying yes. There were some people who did willingly say yes. There were some people who said yes only because you're making me and I can't do anything else. There were some people who flat out said, no, I am not going to fight for you. You put my family and myself in a camp. I am not going to fight for you. So that happened a lot, not just from the people who were in the camps, but also from Japanese Americans across the country. They had all of those different responses when they were drafted into the military. And it wasn't until the 80s that they finally apologized and they're like, hey, this was really unconstitutional what we did to the Japanese. And everybody was like, you think? So it took a long time for them to finally own up and apologize, even though it was just a measly $20,000 for their few years that they spent in these camps. There's a couple posters that I showed in class that I think are pretty powerful. Here's one of them. Shows a Japanese family in one of these camps. You can see the camps in the background. Barbed wire was their fencing, so by fashioning it into the U.S. flag, it really shows the limitations on freedom that the U.S. was really proposing at this time. Symbolism, right? It's pretty powerful. Here's the other one. This one has the Pledge of Allegiance at the top. The last line, it says, "One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all." I wonder who the next exceptions will be. It's kind of like mic drop moment. Can't really say anything after that because it's just this. There's a quote at the bottom from a senator who is of Japanese descent, and he says, "In this democracy, with her extraordinary constitution, how amazing it is. If this democracy could imprison people only because of their ethnic background," which we talked about in document C, because they didn't imprison the Germans or the Italians, so it had to be a race thing. It could happen again, and it could happen to anyone, brown, black, yellow, or white. It could happen to anyone. Although I do think, personally, I think that is, if you're going to exclude citizens because their ancestry comes from your enemy country, it's so much easier to target people who are Japanese because of their color. Targeting Germans and Italians was a lot harder because it was harder to see who they were and differentiate them from other European or immigrants or other regular white Americans. It was a lot harder. So it's really a lot easier to just basically pick on the Japanese. It was a lot easier. So that's part of the reason why that happened. But again, it's a race thing. Has everything to do with the color of their skin, has nothing to do with the military reasons, which they found and that you guys saw in your documents. So that is it for today. So make sure that you guys get those documents done, get those questions done, and watch that video that I put on this one.